Okay, so let's tackle making big and small requests. This will be a bit of a tricky lesson, but I think we can do it. The grammar here will be polite question forms. So we'll go from casual to formal questions, and we'll take care of all the nuances in between. So the most common phrases used when you're being polite are the following. Would it be possible for you to, or would it be possible for me to? Would you mind doing, or ing? Would you? Could you? Can you? And will you? So these phrases, these polite questions, are highly nuanced, and they can be split into two separate sections: formal and polite, and casual and familiar. So starting with formal and polite, would it be possible for you or me to is very polite and usually a very big request. So it's maybe difficult or it's something that is inconvenient. And would you mind doing is also very polite. It's a big request, but it's slightly less formal than the first one. Would you is also very polite, but you expect them to say yes. So the person you're asking is expected to say yes. Could you is also polite, but you're not sure if they will say yes. Now on to casual. Can you is very familiar and casual. It's an easy and informal request. Will you is also easy and informal. You expect them to say yes in this situation, and they may be doing something for you. Let's start with informal requests. So this is can you versus will you. Now remember, these are very easy requests. Can you hand me my phone? It's right next to you. It's very easy. Will you close the door? Also very easy, but instead of me, I'd like you to do this, and I expect you to say yes. So the most common usage for can you and will you are in asking a simple favor. So this is again very informal, and usually you're talking to a close friend, a family member, or maybe a close coworker. But mostly, can you and will you are used for everyday situations, and perhaps you're even living in the same house. A few examples are, can I borrow your jacket? Will you call them to cancel? Can you answer my phone? Let's look at the meanings of these. Can I borrow your jacket? This is a very easy thing, and perhaps you're asking your partner who you live with, and so there's no difficulty here. Will you call them to cancel? This is perhaps a reservation you may have, but you're not going to go. So it's an easy favor that someone can do for you so you don't have to do it. So you expect them to say yes. Can you answer my phone? It's right next to you. Again, very easy. Just pick it up and answer it. Let's move on to standard polite requests. So this is could you versus would you. Could you make a reservation for me? This is quite polite, and it's a bigger request than anything using can or will. Now, could you is probably the most useful polite request. So if you're not sure, you can use could you for most situations unless it's a very big request. Now, would you let them know I will be late? Polite and expect a yes. So could you and would you are very, very useful in slightly formal situations. So you use could you or would you when asking a favor of someone who might say no. So this is could you. So asking an acquaintance. So an acquaintance is someone you don't know that well or a stranger. And again, used in slightly formal situations if you're out in public and you need some advice. And it's quite useful at work to sound more polite in your speech. Some examples using could or would are as follows. Could we use your phone? Would you make sure they have the right address? Could I borrow your notes? Let's look at some details here. Could we use your phone? Perhaps you're out in public, you're asking a shop owner who may say no, but your phone battery has died and you need some help. So this is a polite way to ask. Would you make sure they have the right address? In this case, it might be a superior asking an employee, and you expect the answer to be yes. So, would you make sure they have the right address? You expect them to say yes. Could I borrow your notes? In this case, you might be asking a classmate who may say no, but this is, again, a polite way of asking. And moving on to formal requests. So this involves would it be possible versus would you mind. So the first sentence, would it be possible to change my reservation? This may be quite difficult. Maybe the restaurant is very busy, so they may say no, but it sounds very formal. Would you mind getting me a coffee? This may be inconvenient, but this is a very polite way to ask, and it is only slightly less formal than the first question. So these very polite forms are used often when you're asking a very big favor of a friend or a colleague, or you're requesting something that may be difficult and the answer may be no. Now, this is very useful at the office to sound professional and polite. And as a general rule, using a longer sentence makes you sound much more polite. So if you are worried about sounding too casual, use one of the longer options. Now, because these are longer sentences, we need to take a look at structure first. So let's look at would it be possible? The first question, would it be possible for me to do this? This means, can I do this? So I want to do something, and in this case, you would say, would it be possible to do this? And for me is not necessary in this situation because it's implied. The second, would it be possible for you to do this? Means, can you do this for me? So I can't do it, I need you to help me. In this case, you always use for you. So would it be possible for you to do this for me? Now, basic sentence structure for would you mind comes in two forms. The first, would you mind plus an ing verb plus an object, usually. So this first one is, I need your help. Would you mind driving me to my appointment? In this case, would you mind and ing. The second, would you mind if subject past participle? Would you mind if I borrowed your car? So in this case, I want to do something and I need to know if you are okay with it. So would you mind if I borrowed? You need the past participle when you say this sentence. So we're going to do a lot of practice in our practice section. So let's just look at some more explanations of these forms and some answers for them. So how to answer these requests. Most of the questions can be answered in the same way. So would it be possible? Would you? Could you? Can you? Will you? All of these can be answered with, of course, no problem, or no problem at all. Or in the negative, I'm sorry, I can't, for some reason perhaps. I'm sorry, I have plans. But the one form, would you mind ing, or would you mind if I, always has to be answered with not at all. Because would you mind is asking the question, would it bother you? So the answer has to be not at all, if you wouldn't mind. But if you don't want the person to do something, you can say, actually, I have plans, for example, but actually is an easy way to say no without sounding too forceful. I wouldn't recommend saying I would mind because this sounds quite aggressive. So there's one variation on that last one, so the would you mind form. There is a very formal would you mind if I borrowed your car? That is a big favor and you want to sound polite. But there is another form of this that is quite casual. Is it okay if I borrow your car? So you're still asking for permission, but it's a little less formal, and perhaps you're asking your friend and you expect your friend to say yes. So would you mind if I borrowed your car? It's very formal. You're not sure what they will say. Versus the very casual, is it okay if I borrow your car? You expect your friend to say yes, that's fine. And these use the same grammar structure with if, except in the first situation, you need the past participle borrowed, and in the casual situation, you can use the simple present. Big practice. So before we start some conversations, let's practice with these 5 examples. So fill in the blank based on the explanation at the end of these sentences. So help me move, a very big favor, more formal. Use the car, it's easy, it's your partner. Borrow your pen, a stranger at the bank. From my appointment, here the verb is pick me up and it's your friend, but it's a big favor. Take a break, this is very casual, I want to do something and I'm asking you what you think. Okay, so I have left the explanations in brackets so we have an idea of what these mean. So let's look at the answers. Would it be possible for you to help me move? This is a very big favor, it's more formal, even if it's your friend. Can I use the car? This is an easy request, it's your partner, you both own the car, and of course, they will probably say yes. Could I borrow your pen? This is a very polite, standard way of asking a stranger at the bank. Would you mind picking me up for my appointment? So this is a big favor, but it's your friend, and hopefully they will do this for you. Is it okay if I take a break? This is something you'd like to do, but it's very casual. But still, you want permission. For our 2 practice conversations, we will do one that is more casual and a second conversation that is more formal for the workplace. So the first one is planning a party with a friend. So you have plans to go to a party later tonight, and you're speaking with your friend on the phone. Now, in bold, these are the verbs that we need to use in the blanks. And at the end of each sentence, we have an explanation of the tone or what the person who is speaking is feeling or how big the request is. So take a moment with come over, bring, pick up, and send, and try to use the correct polite or casual question. Okay, so let's look at some answers here. Could you come over at 7 for the party tonight? Now remember, that was a pretty standard request, and you could say no if you have different plans. Would you mind if I brought my friend Keita? In this case, you don't want to be rude and bring someone who isn't expected. So you want to be a bit more formal when you ask your friend. Would it be possible for you to pick up more ice? So this is kind of a big request because that means a separate trip to go and buy more ice that this person has to do. So this is a formal and kind way of asking a big favor. Can you send me your address? This is a very easy thing to do. It takes 2 seconds. you can send someone your address by text. So let's read this through. Hey, could you come over at 7 for the party tonight? Definitely. Would you mind if I brought my friend Kata? Not at all, but I have a favor to ask. Would it be possible for you to pick up more ice? Sure, no problem. Can you send me your address? Okay, so that was our casual situation. This is our more formal situation. In this case, we're changing a meeting with a client at work. So most of these will be quite formal. So the same format, the bolded words, reschedule, suggest, meet, and send, are the verbs to use in the blanks. And very formal may be difficult. All of these words are setting the tone. So reschedule is a very formal situation. Suggest, simple and polite. Again, simple and polite. Send is slightly less formal, but it may be inconvenient. Take a minute now. Okay, so let's take a look at some answers here, and these will be quite formal. Would it be possible to reschedule this meeting? In this case, it may be difficult because everyone is very busy. But this is a very, very polite way of asking, which is always a good idea in the workplace. Could you suggest some times next week? A simple and polite way of asking, and this is as casual as you get in the workplace. So if you want a light and polite way of asking, use could. So again, could you meet the week after? A simple and polite way. Would you mind sending the invite? In this case, it's very easy to send a calendar invite, but the speaker wants to be polite, and it might be slightly inconvenient for the person to send at that time. So again, very formal. Let's read this through. Very sorry, would it be possible to reschedule this meeting? No problem at all. Could you suggest some times next week? Very sorry, could you meet the week after? That's fine. Would you mind sending the invite? Not at all. Thank you for accommodating. Okay, so that was tough, lots of nuance, but I hope you feel more comfortable using some polite speech and some informal speech in the workplace and in your everyday life. See you in the next lesson.